not only from the Ukrainian territory occupied by Russian troops. One specific issue was the catastrophic damages for the electricity grid in Ukraine, which makes them to have to cut the power in some moments of the day. This is having a high impact, and unhappily it will be a high impact on the upcoming winter. We have to go through the summer, but the number of electric stations and electric capacities destroyed by the Russians is growing. Putin is talking about peace negotiation, but his armies are launching another offensive against Kharkiv. They're shelling crowded civilian buildings and try to undermine the upcoming Swiss summit on peace. We support fully the summit organized by Switzerland, following a request from Ukraine. The objective of the summit is to inspire a future peace process. We are working to ensure the broadest possible participation. In parallel, we adopted the legal acts for the use of extraordinary revenues from Russia immobilized assets. You know that this was politically agreed. Today we approved the legal acts and agreed on the proposal, on my proposal, to use 90% of these revenues to immediate military needs of Ukraine through the European peace facilities. I will not deny, because I'm sure you already know, that we have had intense or even heated discussion on this military support for Ukraine, which is facing some obstacles in order to reach the necessary unanimity to make it effective. A wider majority of member states demanded that all pending decisions, and there are quite a lot of pending decisions, to implement the new dedicated Ukraine Assistance Fund on the European Peace Facility have to be approved soon, and in particular the ones that could allow us to use the Russian revenues. Our leaders gave the political approval to this Ukrainian Assistance Fund already in March, and it's still not operational. So we cannot let the European Union military support to Ukraine being taken hostages of other decisions which has nothing to do with this specific issue, especially given the urgency of the situation. Ukraine needs the arms now, not next year. And we are already in a long delay, which has a specific cause, which is the disagreement among member states, in particular, one of them, in order to reach the necessary consensus. And today it has been a strong debate about it. I hope that in the next COREPER this can be solved. I understand they can have concerns and reasons, but the blockage of the decision has to be proportionated to the issue at stake. And in this case, to provide military support to Ukraine is one of the most important issues, one of the most important commitments that we have to fulfill. I hope that we will soon finalize our long-term security commitments to Ukraine, which will include in particular security and defense aspects. We adopted more sanctions against propaganda entities and individuals, and adopted a new sanctions regime targeting the human rights abuses and repressions in Russia. We also are paying close attention to the Russia hybrid actions against the EU and its member states, and look at what could happen in the next European elections, but for sure will be a target of the foreign disinformation and interference. Estonia reported about the latest border incident caused by Russian border guards. In Estonia and in other member states, we expect an explanation by Russia about the latest incident, and all member states express their strong solidarity with Estonia and other member states affected by these actions. Then we went to the Middle East. You know that yesterday we have productive meetings, and today we have been joined by foreign ministers from Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and the Secretary General of the League of Arab States. Just the fact that this meeting takes place, I think, is an important event, bringing together to the Foreign Affairs Council 5 representatives of the Arab countries and the League of Arab States as an important push in order to increase the cooperation between the Europeans and Arabs towards a political solution of the conflict and increasing humanitarian support for the people in Gaza. I want to insist. I issued a tweet early this morning about the horrifying news coming out of Rafah on Israeli strikes killing dozens of displaced persons. The last figure seems to be around 40 people, including small children, being burned. I condemn this in the stronger terms. It proves that there is no safe place in Gaza. And these attacks take place immediately after the International Court of Justice ordered it to stop all military activities in Gaza. Just immediately after, the consequences has been, in one side, Hamas attacking, launching rockets, and on the other side, the intensification of bombing against the Gaza, a place where there is no safe place, and touching a refugees camp and killing and burning more than 40 people, among them many children. You can imagine how horrified we are, all of us, for these sad events. They are more than sad. Our discussion with the Arabs was a way of understanding their position. They presented us their peace plan, and to discuss about how to reinforce our cooperation. The end is to work towards a political solution of the conflict. And one of the suggestions and the proposals that the Arabs made us today was to consider the possibility of an international conference with the title of How do we implement the two-state solutions? Yes, this should be the purpose, not to discuss anymore about the two-state solution, yes or not, because this has been enough discussed, but how to implement it. This proposal could be merging with the request or the mandate of the European Union Council to hold an international peace conference. We could try to merge the mandate of the EUCO with the proposal of our Arab partners. By the time being, the most important and urgent issue is support to Palestinian Authority and supporting UNRWA and increasing humanitarian support. And it's clear that the humanitarian support has been impeded. The humanitarian support is blocked at the border. It doesn't go into. And in some cases, when it goes into, like for example through the pier, artificial pier built by the US, is being stockpiled in the pier because there is no way of distributing it. There is no capacity to distribute it. So the humanitarian situation is becoming, I am saying that every time I talk to you, but that's true. I cannot imagine how worse can it still become, but it's worse than ever. And we have to intervene, and the only thing we can do, we at the European Union, is to participate on the reactivation of the opening of the border in Rafah. We have been asked for that. I proposed to the ministers, they gave me green light, the political green light, to reactivate UBAM, our mission, control border mission in Rafah, which has been sleeping for years, not active. This could play a useful role in supporting the entry of people into Gaza, enter in and out, But this has to be done in accordance with the Palestinian Authority, the Egyptian, and obviously Israel. Israel's authorities. We are not going to do that alone. We are not going to be the outsourcers of the security in the border. We are not a security company. We will do that in a clear political understanding of which is the role of the Palestinian Authority on that. But let's start preparing our capacity to do it if the political conditions are met. Ministers agreed on reiterating our demand on Israel to implement the International Court of Justice orders, to stop blocking the funding to the Palestinian Authority, and to avoid declaring UNRWA a terrorist organization, and consequently to prohibit UNRWA to work on Gaza and the Palestinian territories. These three requests has been expressed in the strongest possible term, demanding Israel to implement, because the rule of the court was putting on Israel some duties, to implement these requirements from the International Court of Justice. I am not talking about the International Criminal Court, which is still not a ruling, but a demand from the prosecutor, but the International Court of Justice, which is a core entity of the United Nations system. The ICJ is the highest court of the United Nations system. All members of the United Nations have the obligation to comply with these decisions. And we cannot disregard against the rule-based world order that we claim every day, that we support and promote everywhere. We at the European Union, we have been built from the ruins of the Second World War and been always a strong supporter of the International Court of Justice. This is the occasion to emphasize how important it is that the ruling of the court be implemented. But as important it is to stop the frozen of the tax revenues for the Palestinian Authority. Otherwise, we could melt down the Palestinian Authority, lacking the financial resources to keep a minimum order in the West Bank. The West Bank is a boiler, and we are not interested in melting down the Palestinian Authority. By the contrary, we have to support the Palestinian Authority, in particularly now that the Prime Minister came and expressed their reforms plans. Sometimes we talk about Hamas as if Hamas was the representative of the Palestinian people. It's not. It is the Palestinian Authority who, with all the inconvenience and all limitations and all problems and difficulties, is someone that we recognize that they go to the United Nations to talk to the General Assembly, that come here being invited by us, and we are the strongest supported financially of this Palestinian Authority. So we cannot afford the financial asphyxia of the Palestinian Authority by undiscriminated action from the Netanyahu government. From now on, I will never say again Israel, I will say Netanyahu government, because it's this government who is taking these decisions. And these are decisions that could kill the Palestinian Authority by economic and financial asphyxia. The ministers discuss what else can we do, apart from demanding Israel to do these three things, a list. And finally, the ministers agreed in something that they rejected on the last Foreign Affairs Council. It's calling for the Association Council with Israel, something that was not accepted or not agreed in previous discussion, and today it has been agreed, because other member states has been asking for that, and we got the necessary unanimity to call for an association council with Israel to discuss the situation in Gaza, Israel being represented by the Netanyahu government, obviously, to discuss the situation in Gaza and to discuss the respect to the human rights under the obligations that Israel has assumed under the Association Council, and how they plan to implement the ruling of the court. But what we have seen since the court has issued this ruling, not a stop of military activities, but by the contrary, an increase in the military activities, an increase in the bombing, and an increase in the casualties to the civilian people, as we have seen last night. Ministers asked me also to propose further concrete measures to be discussed by the Council to address the situation, because the discussion with the Arabs colleague has been very long, very intense. It was a real political discussion, one of the most intense political discussions I have seen in the last 4 years. And we were short of time because I had to go to chair the Syria conference, and we haven't had enough time to go further on the analysis of the decisions that we could take in order to address the situation. By the time being, we have limited ourselves to demand Israel to these three things, and obviously to condemn the attack by Hamas by rockets against the Israeli territories. But I want to stress the importance of the ruling of the International Court of Justice. The International Court of Justice, I want to repeat it, is at the core of the multilateralism system, at the core of the United Nations systems. One cannot defend multilateralism, rule of law at the international level, without being ready to support the implementation of the Court of Justice rulings, which are compulsory for all members of the United Nations. I am not talking of the criminal court, that you can discuss about it, and say, well, Israel is not member, is not part of the ICC. It's part of the ICC. All members of the United Nations have the obligation to fulfill that, and certainly the Security Council will have to discuss about what measures can be taken by the United Nations in order to make these court decisions to be implemented. Then we went to Georgia. We had an exchange on developments around the law of transparency of foreign influence in Georgia. Some member states considered that they were not so grave, not so important. Others consider, rightly so, that this law has is attempting against EU norms and values. The Venice Commission report was mentioned, and according with this Venice Commission, we urge the authorities to withdraw this law. We have started to consider the most appropriate EU response in case the law is enacted, and take decisions at the next FAC in June. But I would like members to be ready to take decisions every time there is something which doesn't fulfill our values, doesn't fulfill international law, doesn't fulfill the European path, not only in Georgia, but everywhere in the world. We discussed about the upcoming elections. The Georgian people will have to vote on the trajectory of their country, and government actions may eventually have an impact on the benefits they enjoy as a result of the EU integration, but no decision has been taken. I debriefed ministers on Venezuela and our engagement with Venezuelan authorities regarding a potential deployment of an electoral observation mission. I will communicate about it in due time. And finally, I was chairing the 8th Brussels Conference on the Future of Syria. I just opened it, and I will go to this conference again after this press conference ends. I want to reiterate that the European Union and its member states have been the strongest support of the United Nations Special Envoy, and providing a lot of funding to the Syrian refugees and to the neighboring countries which are hosting them. The situation is very bad, much worse than last year. Much worse than last year. When you see the figures of the number of Syrian people who are depending on humanitarian assistance and how many children are among them, and you see the amount of effort that the neighboring countries has to do in order to take care of these millions of refugees, we see that there is not improvement in the situation. No, this year is still worse than last year. So the international community has to continue providing efforts to support these people in the neighboring countries, inside Syria, and all refugees. And we make a warning about the so-called voluntary returns of Syrian refugees to Syria. Voluntary returns means voluntary. The refugees should not be pushed back to Syria. And we should not look to the other side when this happens, and we should not incentivize this by any means. We consider that there is not the safe, voluntary, informed and dignified returns of refugees to Syria by the time being. And this is, I think, everything we have been talking today at the Foreign Affairs Council and at the Syria conference.
Thank you, High Representative. We take a few questions. First one was, the mic will come to you actually, so you don't have to walk so here in the back.
Oh my
Luis.
God, what's happening today? There are so many people in the press conference.
Yeah, Luis, maybe you can stand up so that it's easier for colleagues to see you.
¿Qué tal, señor Borrell? Soy Luis Tobar de Informativos Telecinco. Tendría dos preguntas. La primera, ¿cuándo cree que se puede reunir este Consejo de Asociación UE-Israel? Si cree que Israel va a asistir, y más dada la escalada diplomática que está teniendo con algunos Estados miembros, sobre todo con Irlanda y con España. Y la segunda pregunta, si Israel sigue incumpliendo la resolución de la Corte Internacional de Justicia, ¿cree usted o ve ánimo en la sala para que haya sanciones y se puedan aplicar sanciones contra Israel, igual que se hizo con Rusia cuando empezó a incumplir esas resoluciones, o estamos lejos de este escenario? Gracias.
Gracias. Comprendo que hay una especial atención por parte de la prensa española sobre la reacción que ha tenido el gobierno de Netanyahu a la decisión de España, Irlanda y Eslovenia de reconocer el Estado de Palestina. Yo no le llamaría diplomática a la escalada, es todo menos diplomática. O sea, algunas de las cosas que he visto son cualquier cosa menos diplomática. Al contrario, es una agresión verbal absolutamente injustificada y extrema que el gobierno español ya se ha encargado de rechazar. Y con respecto a tu pregunta, pues para decirle la verdad, hoy no lo he visto. Pero, como les he dicho antes, hoy ha sido un día apresurado en el que hemos tenido que abortar la discusión porque empezaba la conferencia de Siria. No puedo decirle cuál sería la reacción en un momento posterior si Israel, el gobierno de Netanyahu, continúa, como está haciendo en las últimas horas, haciendo caso omiso de la Corte Internacional de Justicia.
Thank you. Next one, Thomas Gutschke, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung.
Thanks a lot, High Representative. Two questions on Hungary, please. We are constantly hearing new reasons from the Hungarian government why they are still blocking the EPF. So I'm just wondering how you explain that. Is there another reason why they are doing it, which they are not naming, and which one could it be? And the second question, some ministers today have raised the question whether it's even necessary for Hungary to agree to all these decisions on the Ukraine assistance funds, given that they have secured a dropout, an opt-out for themselves. So they will not be financing any weapons to Ukraine. So my question is there a legal pathway to take these decisions without Hungary? Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to speculate about the argument that the reason that one member state may have to support or to justify his disagreement with a legal text. I have 7 legal texts pending of approval. 7 legal texts pending of approval to mobilize resources to support military Ukraine. Everybody is saying that we are not fulfilling our commitments, that we are not providing on time our commitments. I have 7 legal acts pending of approval in order to mobilize about 5 billion euros to support military Ukraine. This delay can be measured in terms of human lives. It's not a financial problem. It's a problem of human lives. And yes, maybe a member state can have reasons and arguments to disagree in something and to look for other things which are unrelated. But as some member states have said today, it has to be proportional. It has to be a certain degree of proportionality between your concerns, legitimate concerns, and the issues that you are not allowing the others to do. We have agreed that the Hungarian contribution to the European Peace Facility will not be used to supply military support to Ukraine. This has been already agreed. Their contribution will not be used not only for non-lethal or lethal, for any kind of military support to Ukraine. But according with our rules, as far as we interpret these rules right now, we need unanimity in order to approve these 7 legal acts pending. And now there will be the legal acts that I need in order to use the revenues from frozen assets and to convert in arms. I will need some more legal acts. And they will be presented to COREPER this week. And I don't want to speculate about which is going to be the position of all member states, but I've been asking them, please don't block it, because otherwise when we will have the revenue of these assets, we'll keep them carefully in our current account.
Okay, thank you. Next question is Katalin. Yes, go ahead. No, behind, sorry.
Thank you, Peter. I am Katalin Halmai, Hungarian journalist. I would like to follow the Hungarian issues, but from another angle. One general question. The governing parties, the government members, and even the Prime Minister himself claim that the European Union policies in Ukraine push the world to the brink of the World War III. So I would like to ask your reaction to this. And a short question. I am wondering whether the European Union is contemplating the introduction of compulsory military conscription, as Foreign Minister Siga said today in his press conference, and I'm wondering whether he raised this issue in the Council. Thanks.
Bueno, la Unión Europea no tiene la capacidad de establecer el servicio militar obligatorio. Estamos muy lejos de tener estos poderes, ¿no? The European Union has not the capacity to call for a compulsory conscription. We are far away of having this kind of powers. This is a national decision. I read in the newspapers that the United Kingdom are thinking about it, but the European Union cannot, and not even thinking on that, because it's far away from our capacities. And about this issue of the policy of the European Union, the politics of the European Union towards the war in Ukraine, this is an interesting to discuss at the level of the European Union leaders. This is something that has to be discussed where the leaders of the governments sit and discuss. At our level, much lower, much more modest level, we don't have to discuss these kind of things. We discuss practical issues. If the member states decided to create a fund to support Ukraine, and it was decided, by the way, by the European Union Council, my duty and the duty of the ministers is to implement it and to overcome the difficulties in order to make this implementation possible. Philosophical discussions about the Third World War for sure important and interesting, but it was not in the agenda today.
Thank you. And the last question.
Not in my agenda. Maybe it could be in another agenda of another institution, but for today, Foreign Affairs Council, the purpose of the discussion was much more ground-based, lower level. How do we manage to use the resources that the budget has allocated to us?
And the last one, Nureddin.
Good afternoon, Mr. High Representative. Nordin Fridi from Al Arabiya News Channel. I would like to have your comment or reaction, if it is possible, if you are aware about the killing of an Egyptian soldier by the Israeli forces this afternoon at the tension on the border between the two countries. My question is about the meeting of today. What was the reaction of member states after they heard this extensive and comprehensive Arab vision regarding starting from the ceasefire until the two-state solution? Can I ask you a clarification? You spoke about that the Arab countries asked for a peace conference to look how to implement the two-state solution. Are you talking here about the preparatory peace conference or another one? Thank you.
Bueno, creo que ya se lo he dicho, ¿no? No sé de qué estaba hablando. Estaba hablando de eso precisamente. Sobre el incidente al que usted se refiere, no voy a hacer ningún comentario. Si alguien lo tiene que hacer es el ministro egipcio. Sí, hemos sido informados de la tensa situación que hay en la frontera entre Gaza y Egipto. Por eso se nos pide que movilicemos nuestra misión de control de fronteras, porque se piensa que una misión de la Unión Europea podría actuar con el grado de neutralidad suficiente para ser aceptada por todas las partes. En castellano se dice tirar el guante sobre la mesa, o un desafío constructivo. Y esto es lo que hoy podría resumir diciendo que han hecho nuestros colegas árabes. Nos han tirado el guante sobre la mesa y nos dicen, recójanlo ustedes. ¿Están de verdad dispuestos to engage with us on looking for a solution and to build a two-state solution that theoretically you support? Are you ready to work together with us on this endeavor? Okay, if you are ready, tell us how. How, not only demanding and asking, but acting. What are you ready to do? Are you ready to engage with us? Here's our plan. What do you have to say about this plan? In which you agree, in which you disagree? This was the purpose of the meeting. The purpose of the meeting was to know which were the position of the Arab world countries. Not the League of Arab States, but this, the one who came here. Good, now we know. And now they call us, do you want to engage? How? Suggestion. Why don't we organize an international conference on how to implement the two-state solution? Would you be ready to participate on that and push for it? Oh, we have the idea of calling for another conference. Okay, we can merge them. We can do that together. These are the questions that today our Arab colleagues has presented to us. And the glove is on the table. And I hope that we will be able to take the glove and to give a positive answer to this request. And certainly it has been the consideration of a double standard, and that, yes, we are expressing a strong concern, but apart from expressing concern, there is no action. Apart from the humanitarian side, in which we do a lot. We do a lot. And they thank and they recognize, and they thank us, and yes, you do a lot, but the question is not only to provide humanitarian support. It is, when we can, because humanitarian support has been, everybody has to recognize it, and the Arab states told us clearly, look, do you agree with us on the fact that the humanitarian support has been impeded and in a not justified manner? By whom? Well, by the one who controls the border. Because people are blaming Egypt by the border in Rafah, but there are many other border points which are under Israeli control, and they are close. Well, so that is a problem. And we have been called, what can you do in order to try to support more humanitarian support effectively entering and effectively being distributed? And when I see that today the Israeli government, the Knesset, has been studying a law to declare that UNRWA will be forbidden to act and work on the West Bank and in Gaza, certainly is not going to help. Certainly is not going to help. And that's why we ask three things. We demand three things. Implementation of the court resolution. There's a lot of things into this resolution. Not only to stop military actions, also not to impede humanitarian access. You know what this resolution says. It's not a resolution, it's a court ruling. Second, to stop blocking the funding to the Palestinian Authority. On which grounds? On which ground do you take the money of the Palestinian Authority? On which ground you are going to create a meltdown of the banking system in the West Bank? Do you want to bring to the brink of collapse? We don't want. Okay, you don't want, what you are going to do in order to prevent it from happening? And the third one is the issue of UNRWA. By the way, all member states have resumed their funding of UNRWA, and this week the Commission will disburse the second tranche of support to UNRWA, and we are going to pay the tranche due to the Palestinian Authority. But if the Netanyahu government prevents the revenue of taxes that belongs to the Palestinians being received by the Palestinian Authority, who will prevent, and who will promote the money? Well, this is the problem in the West Bank, not only Gaza, the problem in the West Bank, and it's clear that there is violent actions by the settlers in order to attack the convoys of humanitarian support. And these people are armed, heavily armed. And the arms, as far as I don't know, they don't grow in the trees. Someone has provided them.
Thank you. So with this, we have to conclude. High Representative has to return to the Syria conference, but you will see him also tomorrow after the FAC defense. Thank you very much for coming, and big thanks to the interpreters. Have a nice evening.